Welcome back to All Bets Are Off, the Friday edition. Right there you see Matt Laporta. That was in the All-Star, during All-Star Week in the Futures game last year. He's one of the top prospects for the Cleveland Indians, made in that trade for CC Sabathia last year. And to talk about that and much, much more about the Cleveland Indians and their prospects, we have Tony Listora, who's the writer of this book. He wrote this book, and this is the second one that he's written about some of the top prospects in the Cleveland Indians organization. And Tony, before I get back to asking you about more players, and people, if you want to call in, you're more than welcome to call in if you have some questions about players, or email us. The second time you've done this. Mm-hmm. First, I remember picking up last year. And this was, to me, and take this the right way, I have a lot of friends that are writers. This book, and some people say coffee table, this was like a bedside book for me that I had read in probably 2 days, where I just fell asleep, and it just was one of those books. And I think, I guess I want to say the first time you wrote it, how did people come back to you, and so what did they tell you about it that they liked?
Well, the thing is funny how it came about was last year. Every year I kind of do like this prospect ranking,
right?
And I had so much material last year. I did a top 50, and there was another 25 guys, and I had so much material where a couple of fans said, "Why don't you make a book out of this?" Right. And I'm like, "I'll try it out." I did a small run, and I was kind of a little apprehensive. I didn't know what I'm getting into, how much it's going to cost, and who's going to buy it, that kind of thing. Because it's a big upfront cost, especially when you do it by yourself without any advertiser and a publisher and all that. So I did it on a whim last year. It went over well. So I went this year when I went into it. I went throughout the whole season. I was saying, okay, I'm gonna really make this thing a lot better this year, and it just kind of took off from there.
How much has your rankings on prospects changed from this year to last year?
You know, it's amazing. The Indians had a banner year last year with those trades, right, and also that draft they had. Between those two things, and also some of the guys elevating themselves, it's changed a lot, because guys like Jordan Brown was number 2 last year, but that was because it was kind of in transition, the farm system last year, where it wasn't really defined who was the top 10 guys, and where now it's top 15 are guys. I mean, there's guys that are 11 to 20 that could be top 5, top 7 in most organizations.
Jordan Brown, it's a good name to bring up. He went through some injuries, I believe.
Yeah, his knee.
Yeah. Now he's a guy that's a power prospect.
He's more of a John Olerud kind of guy, an average
stroke,
contact.
though, right?
Yeah.
Now, where does he fit in this whole perspective of prospects now? Because he's coming back from that knee injury, and like you said, last year he was a top 5. You know, whether it be you writing it or someone else. He was considered a top 5 prospect in the Indians, system. Is he still considered that high with the Indians right now?
Yeah, the Indians, it's funny. He was in an interesting circumstance in the offseason with the whole 40-man roster thing. He thought he was going to be rostered,
right?
And he was very upset when he didn't get rostered. And I think it was Jimenez that they put in instead of him, which made sense because of the versatility aspect. And so he's got kind of a little chip on his shoulder this year, and he struggled a little bit last year, but a lot of it was because of that knee injury. It kind of sapped his power. He couldn't drive off his back knee, his left knee, because he's left-handed. And he's still in there, a top 20 guy. And he's not really an impact guy. He's more of a depth guy, I think, right now. But he's a guy that can play first base. He's good. Got a good glove, excellent bat control. He's a 300 kind of hitter, and he's a guy that I think they could rely on if a guy like Garco got hurt or if they need somebody at first base.
Well, you know what you just brought up, and that's the funny thing, because when I started the show. Because spring training has started, we're all going, spring has started, spring is here, everything is so great, but injuries are going to happen. Mm-hmm. They're going to happen. Now, I said David Huff, probably the first guy that we've mentioned already, maybe the first guy that puts on the Major League uniform this year. I'm going to take that back. I think you're number 7th prospect. I think Hector Rondon. Mm-hmm. I have only seen him pitch once. This guy gets up mid-90s. He's a bullpen guy, and we know how bullpens go in Cleveland. Mm-hmm. I just think that come the end of April, May, if there's an injury or someone isn't, up to the standard, this is the type of guy you can bring in just because of the power in his arm.
I don't think they're going to bring him because he he has not pitched above single A yet.
Right.
So, but yeah, he's been wowing guys in spring training this year. I mean, I guess there was one report where he was throwing batting practice and they had a whole crowd around him. But last year he really grew. He really grew a lot last year because when he was in Lake County 2 years ago, he was only 19.
Right.
and he struggled a little bit, but he's growing a lot, and he's maturing and filling into his body. But last year he saw a spike in his velocity where he was topping out at 96 miles an hour, and his secondary stuff got so much better, and he was the first, he's either the best or the second best pitcher in the Carolina League last year, and I think he's going to be at, because he's only 21 still, he's going to probably be at Akron for a duration, and they don't really have a need to force him through, because he's still a starting pitcher right now.
Well, do you see him being a star? That was what I was going to get. Because I see them, and this is just my opinion, I just wouldn't be surprised come mid-season where they go, let's put this guy in the pen and kind of fast-track him a little bit.
That could always happen, definitely. I think because of his stuff that they, it's like Adam Miller. They kept that guy in the rotation as long as they could because of that stuff, and he's got potential middle rotation, front of the rotation stuff, and I think they're going to keep him in there, and they're not going to rush him. I think they see something special maybe on the horizon where they've got that depth with those guys like Jackson and Sowers and Lewis. And Lewis is a guy everybody doesn't talk about. So.
Yeah, you're right. Scott Lewis doesn't get a lot of talk. He's a guy that's an Ohio State kid. He's a guy that's an Ohio guy. But I think we get caught up in all those numbers, and we get caught up in, he throws 95, he throws 96. I think it's natural, though. And I think the other thing is, when we look at this Indians rotation right now, Tony, you see Fausto's got a power arm. Cliff Lee, he's got good stuff, great stuff, obviously, but not a power guy per se. And I think a lot of our fans, and I think there's some in the organization that say it's great to have Jeremy Sowers and the Laffies, but at some point in time, it's good to have some power arms as well. And you know how the fights go amongst prospects. A lot of prospects that don't throw over 90 don't get considered as highly as a guy that throws 95, even though he may have better stuff and better character at the end of the day.
Yeah, and that's how it always goes when you're kind of evaluating these guys. It goes down to tools and the stuff and stuff like that, which, it's unfortunate for the guys that are in the high 80s and in like the low 90s, but it goes beyond that velocity, though. You got to be able to command your fastball. You got to be able to have good secondary stuff. So, if a guy's throwing 88 and 90 miles an hour, but he's got an exceptional curveball, kind of like Scott Lewis.
Yeah.
He's got a great breaking ball, and he can throw strikes. Those are the things that are going to, I don't care how fast you throw it. If you can paint the corners, you're going to be successful. So, we've seen guys that can throw 98 miles an hour all over the place, and you don't know what you're going to get.
Right.
So.
Well, and that's the cool thing about this organization, and I'm not saying that because we're in Cleveland, because you know this. There's some organizations that go completely off that clock, and if that clock doesn't hit, 92, you can't start for it. I know a lot of organizations that are just like that. The Indians don't do that. They go a little deeper into it. Let me look at a couple more players before we let you out of here. Bo Mills. You have him ranked as number 8. He's a guy that bloodlines. Once again, family. His dad has been involved. I think his dad still coaches with the Boston Red Sox. He's a power guy. People have told, he's one of those guys you want to watch, I guess is the way to look at it. He was in Kinston last year, so he's going to be another Akron guy?
Yeah, he'll be in Akron. I'll tell you what, and I think Gammon said it, Peter Gammon was a month ago, where he said the Indians are going to have the best AAA and AA talent in baseball.
I was just about to say, our AA team might be.
If you look at, just look at Buffalo, and then I'll get to Mills in a second, just look at Buffalo, you're going to have Laporta, Brantley, and Crow in the outfield potentially. You're going to have Hodges at third, you're going to have Brown at first, you're going to have Valbuena at second, you're going to have Jimenez and those guys at catcher, you're going to have Huff. All these guys in rotation, you got Malone and Sip, and it's amazing the talent they're going to have at AAA, and then guys that can all be used this year if they need them. But in regard to Mills, he's a guy that he kind of fell on a couple of the boards this year. I think a couple of guys went out and saw him in the Arizona Fall League, and they saw some hitches with his swing and whatnot. But he's got some great power. He's a converted third baseman because he has like an impingement in his arm, and I guess the organization is worried about that affecting him, and they want to keep him healthy. And I think they're going to stick with him at first base, at least for the short term, probably long term. But I think he's a guy, another impact bat, which is something we've lacked the last 3 or 4 years. We have not been able to bring a guy up that could be an impact middle or a bat, where we got guys like Laporta, Waglars, Mills, Hodges, Brantley. It's just, you got guys that you're going to be able to pick from in the next 2 years. And obviously not all these guys are going to work out. I think there was a study where 30% of the guys, in first round picks maybe make it.
Yeah.
So if you can hit on 2 of those 5 guys, it's more for them.